So we are welcoming all of you. Today we are embarking on understanding this evolution from manual to digital qualitative analysis. And I have projected a slide there, an analogy on the evolution of transportation. So just as transportation evolved and other fields, but then for transportation, it evolved from bicycles to electric cars. And qualitative research too, it has transformed, from when you were using highlighters, index cards, and sticky notes and so to a more powerful analytical engines like Atlas.ti and Vivo and so on. And each era had its purpose. So the bicycle taught us balance and basic movement. And just as manual analysis taught us the fundamental analytical thinking. But you will agree that attempting a cross-country journey on a bicycle when there is a 4x4 that is available will be inefficient and very, very, very limiting. But you must understand how bicycle work because they can teach you about the speed, the balance, and so on in order, to move ultimately to to the 4x4s. So today we'll master both the foundational principles and these capabilities of modern qualitative analysis to ensure that you can navigate easily from the proposal stage through to publication. We are aware that some of you in attendance are busy with their proposal, some are on the dissertation and thesis phase, some are about to submit, some are busy with the publication. So we will try to accommodate you wherever you are. So, like I said, we are trying to accommodate you on different stages, from developing those proposals to preparing for examination. And I think we'll build systematically, so, from these philosophical foundations to advanced theoretical development. And those who are starting, those who are in proposal phase, they will somehow gain this essential groundwork for methodology chapter, specifically data analysis section in the methodology chapter. And while those in analysis and writing the results, I think you'll acquire also tools, for theoretical contribution or contribution from your study, especially the PhD ones. So each level will try to build on previous and ensuring that there is this comprehensive understanding regardless on the level or the current stage that you are. So the nature of qualitative inquiry, we know that qualitative research serves unique epistemological purposes that quantitative approaches cannot fulfill or will be limited to fulfill. So while quantitative research measures the relationship and test hypotheses, among other things, qualitative research explore the why and the how of human experiences. And in other contexts, this means understanding, for example, how students will experience language policies, how communities interpret service delivery, or how professionals navigate cultural experiences. Those are some of the things. So qualitative research always acknowledges that reality is complex. It always acknowledges that reality is contextual and also that it is socially constructed. So I feel that your role as a qualitative researcher is not to discover this objective truth, but rather to interpret and represent your participants, the meaning that your participants attach, and by also being transparent. So this fundamental understanding, it will help you to shape your methodological choices from data collection throughout analysis and presenting your findings. So while your philosophical positioning shapes every aspect of your research, because I think it's important, you will see that, and we know that ontology, which is the nature of reality, addresses these multiple realities on the ground. So do you believe in one truth or multiple truths? And epistemology, on the other hand, we know that it's concerned with knowledge and how it is created. So through objective observation or subjective interpretation, and axiology, examine the role of values, which I think is very important, especially for qualitative researchers. Imagine if you are doing a study around issues of abortion. So you need to be in check with your values, because you might be biased and it might implicate, those ethical consideration somehow hurt your participants, but also in analysis, I think you might contaminate the results in favor of your values. So these are the things that you need to talk about. So these positions, they must align coherently. So as a constructivist, you cannot claim objective neutrality, or can a post-positivist embrace this multiple contradictory truths? And we are seeing a lot of Ubuntu theories, paradigms, that offer alternative philosophical foundation, emphasizing these relational ontologies and communal epistemologies. So your methodology chapter, it needs to articulate this position very clearly. So this is where data analysis is starting from. It's not after you collected data. And the methodology chapter, specifically the data analysis section, it needs to demonstrate that alignment between philosophical assumption, methodological choices, and I believe that's one of the things that examiners assess, this coherence. And I'll also talk about the alignment with the literature review and theoretical framework or conceptual framework. So qualitative research design requires planning while maintaining flexibility for emergence, because you don't know what you'll get from your participants. Things might emerge while you are getting the data from your participants. But I also feel that research questions should be genuinely exploratory. So if you already know the answer, why do you need to do that research? So we need to also consider how colonial theoretical frameworks might not be fit, to local realities. And this was also mentioned in the conceptual theoretical workshop, that we hosted last week or 2 weeks back. Sampling strategies must align with research purposes. So in qualitative research, we know that you are not seeking representativeness, but that richness and depth from your data. So data collection methods and techniques should respect some of the things are cultural protocols and language preferences, especially in the context where we are operating for, and for those whose research involves, community members and so on. And the analysis approaches must match with your philosophical positioning and the research question. And I'll also talk about the validity strategies that can ensure trustworthiness, without imposing this quantitative criteria inappropriately so. Now, transitioning from manual to digital analysis represent an evolution in capability, not a fundamental change in analytical thinking. So if you are analyzing manually, you still have that analytical thinking, but then moving or migrating or transitioning to digital, you still need this analytical thinking, because manual analysis taught us, essential skills, close reading, yeah, pattern recognition, and this theoretical sensitivity. And I think they all remain crucial in the current digital environment. But I think manual methods become prohibitive, with these large data sets and this complex theory that are always developing. And this is where Atlas.ti comes in, because it will enhance rather than replace analytical thinking, even when you are using those AI function in Atlas. It doesn't replace your analytical thinking because you are at the front driving this analysis. And it manages well these aspects of analysis while preserving the interpretative and these creative elements, that define qualitative research. But most importantly, we often stress that this software does not analyze for you. What it does, it organizes, it retrieves, and it presents your data systematically so that you can focus on interpretation and theory development for those who are doing grounded theory. So you can see how this evolution allows for more sophisticated analytical work, but at the same time, maintaining that methodological rigor or quality. Now, we talk about philosophical foundations, and I think your philosophical positioning needs to determine how you utilize Atlas.ti capabilities. As constructivists, the emphasis is on flexibility and emergence. So the codes that you are developing, they are developed, iteratively while you are engaging with the data. And for post-positivists, the focus is on this systematic procedure and reliability, so that you can establish clear protocols and measuring inter-quota agreement. And in Atlas.ti, we have that function to measure that inter-quota reliability and agreement. I will go into that. For critical researchers, they use Atlas to document these systematic patterns of oppression while organizing these resistance narratives so that they can advocate for change. And for example, those who are aligned with Ubuntu, they might involve communities in collaborative coding process. So validating interpretations will need you to go and consult the community again and again. So you can see that these different approaches uses the same software, but with different philosophical intentions and methodological procedures. So it is very important that you read extensively on this research designs and analytical approaches and how they are interrelated. So your methodology chapter, including that data analysis section in your methodology chapter, they must clearly articulate your philosophical position and demonstrate how Atlas.ti usage aligns with these commitments. So it's not only enough to say, I will analyze data using Atlas.ti version 25. You need to go beyond that. And this framework or approach, data analysis approach selection, it drives this analytical and theoretical contribution. So your basic thematical analysis, which is well suited with exploratory research, it somehow advances and require more sophisticated approaches. So for those who are doing grounded theory, and we know there are variations in that, they differ somehow significantly based on your epistemological commitment and research goal. For example, the Straussian approach It's well suited with researchers comfortable with structured procedures, while Glaserian approaches require greater tolerance for ambiguity. So you need to read more on that. You need to read more on that. And for API, for those who are doing phenomenology, we know that there is descriptive and interpretive. So you need to also demonstrate to what level are you interpreting. And we know that the IPA, the interpretive phenomenological analysis, demands intensive case-by-case analysis before these cross-case patterns. And it's suitable for small samples, while you are exploring these lived experiences. For critical discourse, this is suited research, that is examining these power relations and ideological structures, particularly relevant to African and indigenous, based on this social justice research. And there's also narrative analysis, which focuses on, what can I say, on how stories construct identity and meaning. And the framework analysis combines deductive and inductive approaches, which is very useful for the policy in research. So again, in your data analysis section, we need to see how you will be analyzing deductively or inductively, where deductively you will be having this predetermined code. But I think because qualitative researchers, you don't know what you will find in your data, sometimes it's always safe to not limit yourself and maybe use a hybrid approach. Because if you have predetermined codes and you get interesting data, how are you going to incorporate that? So these are the things that you really need to think about. So your choice must align with the research question, philosophical position, and your intended contribution, especially with the PhDs. So I am pushing a bit of theory, but we'll get into Atlas.ti soon, because I think it's very important, for us to understand these fundamentals and philosophical positioning. So excellence in analysis depends on data quality. Poor data cannot be rescued by sophisticated software. So if you collect very poor data, there's nothing that Atlas.ti can help you with. So interview skills are required and you need practice. That is why it is recommended that you do pilot study before you go full force into the field to collect data, so that you can see your flaws and improve them while also improving the interview protocol, especially those maybe for masters who are starting. Yeah. So you need to learn to listen, and actively so. You need to probe, and strategically so, and to remain comfortable with silence, because sometimes the participants remain silent and there is a lot of data in that silence. But then these are things that you can discuss with your supervisor, and I believe they will advise accordingly. And in indigenous context, African context, cultural protocols, around hierarchy, age, gender, social standing, they significantly influence data collection. So it is your duty to understand these dynamics and plan accordingly if you want to collect quality data. Language choices are also important. Does your participants prefer their home language, English, or mixing the two? And how will you preserve meaning across this translation? For those who are doing linguistics, they know a lot about translation. There are some serious rules around translation. And sometimes we see students who have conducted interviews in vernac and translate. And they will talk about the translation, but then on the quotation, sometimes we don't hear the participant voice. So these are things that you need to discuss with your supervisor to see to what extent can you translate or not, and so on. There are rules around that. So transcription is analytical. It's not just clerical. So every decision about how to represent speeches involves interpretation. So you need to invest a lot of time in transcribing. I know some of you have bursaries and you outsource the services, but it is your responsibility to go back to the transcribed material, read and reread it to ensure that it is a true reflection from the interviews. Now, Atlas.ti has this organizational capabilities, very good ones, and they support this analytical work that is impossible, to do with manual methods. We have a project manager which contains the entire analytical work, your documents, your code, your memos, networks, and relationships, and so on. And it is useful because it ensures that nothing is lost or forgotten compared to while you are doing manual and you have this less data and you have this board. So if one or two sticky notes can fall, it's a problem. So your document manager allows efficient retrieval of specific segments, across hundreds of interviews. And this is the power of Atlas.ti over NVivo because it can handle large data without any problems. And I was saying to honor students that many people prefer NVivo because the interface is welcoming and it's easy. But then also in Atlas, we have the web version that is easier to understand. So feel free and be encouraged to use Atlas.ti. We also have network views, which I'll go into. We have collaborative features. So if you are in a team or if you are writing an article with your supervisors, there are collaborative features. You can work together, especially on the web one, because it has features that enable team-based research, while maintaining this individual accountability. So you can see these organizational advantages. They allow you to focus more on analytical thinking rather than data management. We have to talk about examiners' expectations for masters and PhD. So most examiners, they assess qualitative research against, the criteria that they have that goes beyond basic competence. So you need to be competent in analyzing data. So for master students, for example, students need, and I think it's a must, that they need to demonstrate methodological understanding and appropriate application. So choosing a suitable framework and applying it systematically. So if you are choosing thematic analysis, you need to apply it. So if you are following Brown and Clock, those 5 steps, or rather 6 steps, we need to see how you have applied it. We need to see how you familiarize yourself with the data, by listening to those interviews, recording, by reading the transcription. We need to see how you were coding, your open coding, your Excel coding. We need to see how the themes, emerge through those patterns. So application, very important, and they are looking at that, both the examiner and your supervisor. For PhD students, you need to go beyond because you need to contribute original knowledge, through these methodological approaches or the insights, from your data. So you can see that at both levels, there is a requirement for that philosophical coherence. And that is where your ontological, epistemological, axiological position should be aligned, consistently throughout your research. Sometimes the supervisors talk about this golden thread, and it is part of it, because you can now see that you talk about philosophical foundations, your data collection, and you need to align them, in the discussion and analysis, as well as the literature review and your theoretical or conceptual framework. And also after that, the implications. We need to see how you have realized those research objectives. We need to see how your questions and to what extent, has this data assisted you to get the answers, for your research questions. We need to see that problem that you stated in the introduction chapter. We need to see to what extent it has been solved or not. So you must go beyond presenting your findings. And analytical transparency, very important, so it means what? I can say documenting decision. So making those processes so that others can follow your reasoning. So those rich descriptions will provide sufficient detail for your supervisor, for the examiner, and for your readers to assess this transferability. We know there are a lot of challenges with issues related to validity, reliability in qualitative research. So those rich description, they are very important, the credible interpretation, means that you need to have the findings that are well supported by evidence and logical reason. So while you are presenting your findings, it's not enough for under one theme for us to see one quotation while you have 12 participants. It is not enough for us, like even those who have stratified sampling where you have different groups. It's not enough for us to see the quotations for one group. So if you have interviewed your professors, associate professors, lecturers, junior lecturers, we need to see those quotations, in the themes and not one group. So for ethically, yes, I think it involves, considering that research impact, on participants and communities beyond the approval. Common mistakes. So I think it's important to learn from common mistakes, and by doing so, it will accelerate, your research development. The philosophical inconsistencies are frequent. So students sometimes will claim constructivist approaches while seeking objective truth. So make sure everything is aligned, or use grounded theory while testing predetermined hypotheses. So supervisors, they will see those things and they will return your work. So this engagement requires, demonstrating how your findings relate to, how your findings challenge, how or rather they extend existing knowledge. So evidence quality matters a lot, and your major themes need substantial support, not single illustrative codes, because it happens. And methodological problems often stem from these misalignments, between your research question, your sampling strategies, and analytical approaches. So by presenting this issue, I think you need to clearly include, the documentation of the analytical process and this integration between findings and discussion. And I believe by understanding these common errors will help you to avoid these mistakes. And you will be able to demonstrate the analytical sophistication, maybe to examiners and your supervisor. Coding is very important. And I always say, if you have completed your coding, That is open coding, Excel coding. So if you have those codes and you have clean, mesh them and establish the relationships and also move to the group coding, Excel coding. For me, I think you'll be maybe 85% done analyzing in Atlas. So quality coding requires also systematic approaches, which is often overlooked by novice researchers. But even experienced researchers, especially now with this lot of AI softwares. So some researchers will just throw in all these transcripts into an AI software, and with a good prompt, it will generate the codes, the code categories, and the themes, and it can even present your chapter, within minutes. But like I said, coding requires systematic approaches. And that is why some of the students will have challenges when coming to oral exam because they don't have a system, but yet everything is there. So these are the things that you need to think about. So in the data analysis section, when you are telling us about thematic analysis, you need to apply it accordingly. And we also see that those who are using those AI softwares, sometimes they didn't address it in the ethical consideration. So a participant don't know what you will be doing with their data, throwing it into AI software. Some of you don't disclose. Some of you don't even acknowledge that you have used this particular software to develop the codes, the code categories, and the themes. And we will have problems because you are not transparent. So code proliferation is common. Students always create, not always, but often, especially those who are starting, create hundreds of codes, without organization. And it's common in those who are using the AI function. I'll also demonstrate it because there are other tools in Atlas that you can use, like your conversational or intentional coding, which I think is better because you are at the forefront of driving this analysis. And if you create hundreds and thousands of codes without organization, this may lead to analytical paralysis. So it is important that you establish these systematic processes so that you can consolidate the related codes and develop this hierarchy and structures. So inconsistent application will always occur, when the codes are applied differently across data sources or periods of time, So it is your responsibility to always document and clearly show definitions for every code and review application regularly. So that is why we have memos. That is where you need to capture all these things. And it will be an audit trail, and you will be able, if you forgot, to justify on why you took certain decision for your coding and analysis. So purely describing coding summarizes without analysis. I think we need to move beyond what to why and how. So single coder bias, affects reliability and even in solo research. So we need to have those systems so that we can improve the quality of our coding. And premature closure, yes, sometimes people will code and not look at co-occurring codes prematurely, so and close their project. I think you need to try and remain open to emerging codes, throughout the analysis. And this will form part of your quality assurance, through that inter-code reliability that we were talking about. And when you will be discussing and unpacking the analysis, it will be easy for you to even shed the lights on those negative case analysis, the outliers, and so on. And I think this can strengthen your analytical credibility. We are talking about AI tools, so yes, and we are not against that because we are giving you Atlas and there are AI tools in Atlas. So we believe that AI tools offer efficiency. But then there's also some danger that we need to talk about because they can threaten quality interpretation. So there are these uh, algorithm algorithmic patterns that carries cultural biases, from the software itself that can potentially misinterpret, especially non-Western concepts and practices. We have these automated functions. So automated analysis, they somehow lack, contextual understanding. And that is why I was saying it's good to use AI, but then use it as a guideline. You need to go back, clean and understand and so on, so that you are driving this process. Because somehow they lack this contextual understanding, even if you give it the prompts. So, for example, understanding why your participants pause before discussing financial difficulties, because you might write it in brackets, those non-verbal cues. It might fail to pick it up or understand why the participant was in silence or in pause. So most AI, promotes these predetermined categories over emergent analysis. And this is contradicting the fundamentals of qualitative analysis. So most concerning is the loss of reflexive engagement with the data. And I think intimately being familiar with participant voice will help you and won't get, or rather it won't be replaced by this algorithmic, summaries. So if you're using AI, use it cautiously and transparently. So a good transcription can support, and improve efficiency, but it always requires human verification, for accuracy and also this cultural sensitivity. So never rely solely on AI generated patterns, but we always emphasize that treat them as preliminary suggestions because they require rigorous human interpretation. So try to maintain this ethical standard by ensuring participant consent, yeah, for this automated AI analysis. And if you are working with communities also, make sure that you prioritize rather community benefit, over research efficiency. I want to talk about the manuscript chapter. I think when you are doing proposal, you have this section where you will say, I will do chapter 4, chapter 5, presenting the findings. This is how I will be doing it. If you're not sure, you can talk to your librarian so that you get access to the published thesis and dissertation in your department so that you can see how it is done and what is expected of you in terms of presenting the findings and discussing and analyzing. So, because I think the structure, it affects, the research impact and examiner's assessment. So this findings chapter with discussion analysis, I believe they should represent the themes and systematically, so with evidence. So we need to avoid, both sparse support and overwhelming quotation list. So while we are saying don't put one quotation, it's not necessary also to put, 15 quotations and not say anything to that. So you need to speak to those key quotations. And you need to integrate your participant voices meaningfully so, not just illustration of these predetermined points. And it is important to address negative cases. and this confirming evidence to demonstrate analytical rigor. So what am I saying? Most students will present their findings. So you will see the title of the chapter will be presentation, discussion, and analysis, but they will just present and not discuss and analyze. So you present the findings. These are things that you found from the field, from a participant. You present them, and then even discussion and analysis now. And there are tools to make use of that, to help you in Atlas, which I believe they are underutilized, but we'll come to that. We need to see those similarities, the differences, the contradictions, if they are there. That's how you interpret the presented findings. If you have applied stratified sampling, we need to see also around those groups. And the next step, we need to see how this presented data, how this interpreted data is aligning with the literature review. So which those aspects that confirm literature, dispute literature, contradict literature. If you have the gaps in the literature, how is this data closing some of those gaps? We need to see how your data is aligned to the theoretical or conceptual framework. And for PhD, after that, you will get, this building blocks to develop either a model or a framework, which should be one of your objectives. Then after that, then what? So implications. We need to see how these things is relating to the objectives and the research questions and so on. So the discussion chapter must engage theoretically with existing literature, to show that you're finding extend, challenge, or confirm current knowledge, and developing implications, clearly so for practice and theory is important. Also acknowledging the limitations while maintaining this confidence in the contribution is very important. So you can see that quality presentation requires clear signposting, for readers, so that they can navigate through the complex analysis that you have done. It's important that you develop this logical argument that should flow and builds up, progressively towards this insight. So balance is needed. You need to balance evidence position with readability. So it is text heavy. Which one of you have read the whole thesis, from chapter 1 up to the last chapter? It's text heavy. So with Atlas.ti, there are some visualization which can help the reader. These are some notes on building theoretical contribution. So here I'm talking about the level of your analysis. So analyzing descriptively, simply reports on what the participants has said. In honors, I think you can go away with it, but then at this level, I think it's valuable. Yes, it's important, it's valuable, but I don't think it's sufficient, for the standard that you are in. Interpreting analysis, interpretive. Yes, this will explain meaning and significance. For example, why financial stress affects academic identity. Not just it does affect it. So these are the level that you can check on. I just want to rest because I want to show you some of the things in Atlas.ti. And quality assurance, very important. Like I said, in qualitative, there are some challenges with the rigor, issues relating to, or rather counterparts of reliability and validity. So I think quality assurance, requires understanding of trustworthiness criteria, where you unpack and show how you have applied these 4 legs under trustworthiness of data. Because credibility replaces internal validity. And it establishes, how can you establish, through this prolonged engagement, triangulation, member checking, and negative case analysis. So prolonged engagement can be being familiar and deeply so with your data, not just extensive time. And triangulation in this case might be involving multiple perspectives, not just multiple sources. So we need to see that balance coming up from your data. So if you are getting some of the negative things that are not aligned with your research question and so on, we need to see those here. Member checking, yes, validates interpretations, not just factual accuracy. And I know a lot of students here, by member checking, they will do the first step by sending the transcripts to your participants to check if they reflect, or rather, they are true reflection of the interview. But then after you have done your own interpretation, do you go back and verify with your participant and so on? Well, that needs another workshop. So transferability, it can be a replacement of external validity, through this rich description that enable others to assess applicability. So you can see that with the system that you've employed, someone can apply them and do similar study in a different context. So systems, very important. And I want to talk, we had a good workshop 3 weeks back by Professor Mbiza. And I believe you can access that recording. But initially what he was saying was that the publication, transformed this research into knowledge, and it requires somehow strategic planning. He emphasized planning. So some of the academical journals, they vary in your orientation. So you need to ensure that your philosophical alignment between your research and the general scope, it's on point. And manuscript structure, they should follow the general requirement that information is always there. And yeah, so those are some of the things that he talked about. I wanted to go live. I think we have some few minutes. I'm gonna, okay, maybe while I'm waiting for Atlas to open, because I was emphasizing coding and coding. So in Atlas, for those who haven't started, you need to open a new project. So it can be, you can put the title of your study, and here you can make some comments if you like. Then you go to create, and you'll see on the list here, there will be that project. Also, there are some tutorials. That you can go and revisit. There are some sample projects that you can practice about and so on. So a lot of resources that are in there. Don't be shy. Just go in and play around them. I just want to do a simple exercise on coding, because coding is at the core of your analysis. So I did the same one with the honors. So yeah, so here you have a study, remote working experiences during COVID-19 pandemic, and these were semi-structured interviews with university staff members, and you can see the participants' name, something that you must not do. Make sure that you use participants or pseudos. We don't want to see your participants' name here. So this is how you structure your transcript. You need to see the interviewer and the participants' responses. So I just need you maybe on the chat just to try and attempt to code. So here the interviewer was thanking the participants, for participating, And they asked them, can you tell me about your transition to working from home when the pandemic started? And this is the response. Well, it was quite overwhelming initially. I remember that Friday when they announced we'd all be working remotely starting Monday. I had no dedicated workspace at home, no proper desk setup, nothing. I spent the entire weekend frantically trying to create some sort of office space in my apartment. So coding means assigning a label to the participant response. And while this participant, is responding, there are some non-verbal cues that I think you should capture. Don't forget them. There's a lot of data there. And if they were pausing here, you need to record there because there is a lot of data. So maybe in the chat for this first part, where they were saying it was quite overwhelming initially, what will be the label that you assign to this sentence? And yeah, I just need you to try. In qualitative, the nice thing is that there's no right or wrong. So you can be creative and assign a label the way you understand, what the participant is saying. And there's another one. I remember that Friday when they announced we'll be working remotely, starting Monday. Then I had no dedicated workspace. At home, no proper desk setup, nothing. So which are some of the codes that you can assign to this? So I know this is what we're doing in the bicycle era, but I'm gonna show you how you need to master this, and it will be easy in Atlas.ti. Maybe let me give you one more minute. Miss Pala, you will let me know if there are any responses on the chat.
Yes, Doctor.
Any responses? Yes.
Not yet.
Okay. Let's give them a moment.
In the meantime, Doc, while we're waiting for them, which version is Atlas.ti that they are using? They asking.
It's version 25. We are on version 25 now.
Okay. Let me just write it on the chat.
Okay. Any responses?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm giving them just one last minute.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know sometimes there is a drag. We might be a few seconds ahead of others.
Yes. There's a level 5 for overwhelmed. Okay. Sarah Lee says level 5 for overwhelmed and unprepared for the transition.
Okay. Those are good codes, they're unprepared. So you can see that label, it captures the essence of the sentence. So
And
those are codes.
Yellow says feelings, an announcement, lack of resources.
Okay. So I can see that they are following and they understand the basic concepts, of coding, and I also tried it manually in the that bicycle era. So yes, I also got they're feeling overwhelmed, lack of tools of trade, home versus work, office space, and so on. So these are the words, the labels that you can assign to your segments. And remember, make sure that, or rather try to highlight either a sentence or paragraph. Because if you just highlight overwhelmed, remember this will be your quotations. So when you go back and you want to make use of this quotation, there'll be only one way that is coming up. So always make sure that you quote on a sentence level or a paragraph level. Now, let's go into Atlas. So this is your project and this is your study. So what you can do, you can go to home and add documents. Then you'll add your transcripts, or you can go to where you have saved your transcripts and drag and drop them into Atlas. They'll still be loaded. So, okay, maybe I can wrap this up in 5 minutes because I see the time is gone. So you will have a list of this documents. Then you can double click, open it. So what you can do, you highlight that segment, and someone said overwhelmed. So you can right click and go to apply codes or go to coding there. Same thing. Then while you are here, you have to type that label, overwhelmed, and there we go. You have a code that is aligned with this quotation. And what was another response?
Another response was preparedness to work from home and dedicated work. Okay, to work from home.
You type it, then you go to plus, you edit, and the other one was?
It was a dedicated workspace.
Space, yeah. So this is how you do it. You will type it, go to plus and add, and so on. Then if you go to your second transcript and you feel that that code is already there, you just activate it. Then it will be attached to the segment. So I talk about some AI functions that I want you to try. So, for example, let's take this segment, the first one. Sometimes you might not be sure what to code. It happens. So you might go to coding and ask Atlas, to suggest the codes for you. Then you can assess and make an informed decision. So it and okay, still thinking. Overwhelming experience, you see. So if you think this is in line with how you are understanding this, you can activate it. So this suggestion, it helps sometimes because sometimes you get stuck. But then I like it because you are in the driving seat, so you won't accept anything. So remote work challenges, so yeah, these are things that will come up and you can activate them if you feel they are in line with what you are doing. Another one, let me quickly show you. So you'll have a transcript of the document, then you can go to analysis. This is your playground. So there's AI summaries. If you go here, it will capture the essence of the whole transcript in a few seconds, 5 seconds. So, okay, let's give it a chance and see what comes up. So remember, if you are doing thematic analysis, step 1, if you are using Brown and Clock framework, you need to be familiar with you need to familiarize yourself with the data. And this is one of the way that you can be familiar with the data, and you can be transparent about it, over above reading the transcripts and listening to audio. We have also under analysis, remember this is your playground, we have AI coding. So this AI coding, for the first transcript, you may use it. And what it will do, it will just give you a guideline on the code that you may ordinarily overlook. So it will give you a list of all the codes. And because you will be familiar with the transcript, you can see these codes and the segments that it comes from. So if it is okay with what you're doing, you can leave it. If not, you can disable it. So this is AI coding, but you can see it's having 29 categories, which is not right. But if you apply, what it will do, it will code everything. And you will see it will also code the interview, something that we don't want. Okay. So you need to go back and say, okay, first code is adaptation. Is there anything around adaptation here? Is there anything around home environment? If there is not, you click and remove from coding. So there's a lot of work for you to do, a lot of cleanup if you are using this function. Then going to the second transcript, you can use some of this code and the one that we have used. But what I like is the intentional coding. So let me take this topic. So intentional coding, you also go to analysis and there's intentional coding. So it's also AI function, but the difference here is that you give it context. Then you give it context is remote working experiences. You go next and next. So what it will do, it will come up with questions. And what you can do, you can see if some of these questions are matching your actual research questions, not interview questions, but research questions. And you can see already there are code categories. Remember with the first one, it just gives you a number, but you don't have a say. So here you have a say, you can change, the category and align it with the question. If you have more questions, you can go to add questions and add your questions and the category. If one of the questions is not in line with what you're doing, you can disable it. So I like this intentional because you are working with the system. It doesn't do anything, everything for you. So if you start coding, remember that one had a lot of categories. So this one already, you know how many categories will be there, and you were involved in this process. So you can see these are 45 codes and 5 categories. So again, you can go and double check. You see now it has coded the segments that you don't want. So it is your responsibility to double check and remove these codes that are not aligned and so on. So these are the things that you can go and do. I just want to show you something before I end this. So ultimately, you will have all the transcripts, and you can see these numbers in the brackets. There are codes within each and every transcript. So you will have all the codes. You will have all the codes. And what you will do now, you will have to move to code categories. So I always say if these are fruits, different fruits, then your oranges, your lemons, you can give them a color, and you can select them and take them into this category, and this might be the citrus group. So you need to group your codes according to their similarities or characteristics. But the trick here is to make sure that you understand the coding, and if you can master the coding, moving to code categories and developing the themes won't be too much of a problem. When I talk about coding on a sentence or paragraph level, it will help you because, for example, let's take this one code, barriers. Maybe when you're presenting your findings, you will be talking about barriers and you need some quotations. So you can just click one code that you're talking about and check, key quotations. So you can easily copy and paste it into your draft that you're working in on the word processor. So we can see that this is coming, from this particular participant. So you can see how it makes easy for you, and you can always export the code reports, the quotation reports, and so on, which will respond to that transferability, the audit trail. Yes, the audit trail. So I know we focus a lot on the theory part. Maybe we need to have another session where now we do things practically in Atlas, but we will send you evaluation forms. And if you do require that specific training, which I think maybe you will, let us know, and we'll see when we will maybe allocate 2 to 3 hours, working in Atlas TI. But I think where you are now, you understand the basics of coding and so on. Sister Ref, I think I'll end here.